Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges India has faced since its independence, poverty. But we're going to go beyond just the numbers. We're going to look at this as a human story, a story of incredible struggle, but also of resilience. All right, let's get into it. So, to really get our heads around what poverty feels like, let's start with two real-life examples. First, in the city, you've got someone like Ram Saran. He finds work when he can at a flour mill, but his income is just not enough for his family of 6, all crammed into a single room. Then, out in the countryside, there's Laka Singh. He doesn't own any land, so he does odd jobs. Work is unpredictable, and his family lives in what's called a kucha hut, basically a house made from mud and straw. They're in different parts of the country, but they're living the same story of trying to survive day to day. You know, this one sentence from Ram Saran's story, it just says it all. It really makes you stop and think. For millions of people, poverty isn't about not having the latest gadgets. It's a world where something as basic as a pair of shoes is a luxury you just can't afford. Okay, so we felt the human side of this. But how do you go from these individual stories to understanding the problem on a national level? I mean, how do you even begin to measure something as complex as a life of struggle? And that's really the key question, isn't it? If we know poverty is about being hungry or sick or not having a safe place to live, then just looking at how much money someone makes, well, it doesn't give you the full picture. That's why India started looking for a better way to measure it. And here it is. It's called the National Multidimensional Poverty Index, or MPI for short. It's a total game changer. Instead of just asking, how much do you earn, the MPI asks about all the different ways a person might be deprived, all at the same time. It gives us a much clearer picture of what's going on. So the MPI is built on 3 really basic fundamental parts of life. It looks at a person's health, their access to education, and their overall standard of living. Pretty straightforward, right? But looking at these 3 together is what makes it so powerful. And this is where it gets really interesting. The MPI digs into 12 specific indicators across those 3 dimensions. It's looking at stuff like nutrition, whether a family has clean cooking fuel or a real toilet, and even if they have a bank account. And see that one there, housing? Remember Laka Singh's Kucha Hut? That is exactly the kind of real-world hardship this index is designed to see and to measure. All right, so now that we have the right tool, the MPI, let's look at the data. And what we find is a story of really amazing progress, but also some pretty tough realities we can't ignore. So, this is the big question. With this smarter way of measuring poverty, what's the actual report card for India? Here's the headline number. For the period 2019 to 2021, about 15% of India's population was considered multidimensionally poor. But you know, a number on its own doesn't tell the whole story. To really understand what 15% means, you need to see where we came from. And this is where it gets incredible. Just look at this trend. Back in 2005, more than half the country, 55%, was living in multidimensional poverty. 10 years later, it was cut down to 25%. And by 2021, it's down to 15%. I mean, that is a truly staggering drop in a very short amount of time. Let's put that in human terms, because it's not just about percentages. In the 5 years between 2016 and 2021 alone, 135 million people were lifted out of this kind of poverty. That is a massive number of lives changed for the better. But, and this is a really important but, that progress hasn't been shared equally. This chart shows that pretty clearly. While the national average poverty rate at the time was 22%, you can see that for certain vulnerable groups, the burden is much heavier. For scheduled castes, it was 29%. And for scheduled tribes, a staggering 43%, nearly double the national average. So the big takeaway here is that national averages can hide these deep, painful inequalities. So this leads us to the next obvious question. If there's been so much progress, why does this kind of poverty still exist? And what's being done about it? Let's get into the causes and the solutions. It's a huge question, and the answer isn't simple. It's really a mix of history, economics, and social factors that have been building up for a very long time. So here are some of the main drivers. You've got the historical legacy of colonial rule, which held back economic growth. Then there's the economic reality of huge inequality in both income and land ownership. On top of that, you have a massive population and not enough jobs to go around. And finally, a really big one is debt. Families get trapped in debt cycles just trying to cover medical emergencies or even social events like weddings. So how do you even begin to fight all of that? Well, the government's approach has been like a 1-2 punch. The first punch is to promote overall economic growth, hoping that a rising tide lifts all boats. The second is to launch very specific programs that attack poverty directly. And here are just a few examples of that second punch. You have MGNREGA, which guarantees work for rural families. There's the Ujjwala Yojana, which directly tackles that clean cooking fuel indicator we saw earlier. PM Poshan helps with nutrition through school meals, and another program provides quality healthcare to pregnant women. Each one is designed as a direct hit on a specific type of deprivation. Okay, we've gone through the data, the causes, the programs. But before we wrap up, I want to take a step back and think about what the real goal is here. What does it actually mean to win this fight? And this is a really profound question to ask. Sure, lifting someone above a statistical line is a huge deal, a massive first step. But does it mean they are truly free? Free from fear? Free from being looked down upon? Does it mean they're free from suffering? This takes us to an even bigger idea, and that idea is human poverty. It's about shifting our goal from just survival to something more, to what you might call a reasonable level of living. It's not just about having enough food to eat, it's about having the freedom and the ability to make choices about your own life. And this is what human poverty really asks. It goes so much deeper. Do people have an education? A stable job? Do they have self-confidence? And maybe most importantly, are they free from discrimination? It's not just about being not poor. It's about having dignity. This is the ultimate goal. And I think we'll end on this powerful thought from Mahatma Gandhi because it just perfectly captures everything we've talked about. He said, India would be truly independent only when the poorest of its people become free of human suffering. The fight isn't just about economics. It's about building a nation where every single person is free, truly free.